So I'm going to be doing in little different videos on specific poses so that you can find maybe some more ease or learn a couple tips or tricks so you can find more success in learning some maybe difficult poses. So before we go into crow pose, we have to strengthen certain muscles, the cores for one, but also we'll be on our hands. So you might just start in whatever seat. I'm going to sit on a block. You can sit on a blanket and just rotate your wrists. So we're just going to warm up our wrists a little bit. And then take one hand and stretch your fingers down towards the floor as you straighten your arm out. Maybe all the way, maybe not. And notice how that feels in the wrists. And then switch hands and take your other hand's fingers, drawing them towards you so you feel that stretch in your wrists. And then release. Just sort of rotate the wrists again, reverse direction. So we want to build strength in the upper body, and we want to build strength in the core. And there's different steps that we can do to ease into finding that balance. I don't have a wedge with me, but one thing that can also help if you have limited range of motion in your wrist is to get one of those wedge blocks, which is about, I think maybe 2 inches high on one side, and then it tapers down to maybe just a quarter of an inch. And you can put that on your mat or under your mat so that your hand, when you're bending it, is the heel of your hand is a little higher. Another thing you can do if you don't have a wedge is just fold your mat over so that you have 3 thicknesses of mat under the heels of your hands, and the knuckles of your hands is right at that point where you're coming off of that. So something like this. So your fingers are on the single level of the mat, and the heels of your hands are on the thicker part of the mat. So this is another way to ease the wrists. So before we get into the actual pose, come to table and just press gently into your hands. Feel the engagement in your upper back and shoulder girdle. And let's do a little bit of cat-cow to warm up. So inhale cow and exhale cat. Just notice how this feels. And then let's come to a seat. And we're going to come into a little bit of core work. So sit up nice and tall with your feet in front of you, hands behind your legs. And this is also great to do near maybe the end of your practice. If you've had already a lot of warm-ups, it's a little bit easier, but we'll still go through some warm-ups that you would want to do in preparation for crow. So you want to make sure that your spine is long. Avoid this rounding or flexing of the spine. Sit up nice and tall, hands behind the legs, and bring your feet a little closer. Keep your heart lifted, shoulders back, and see if you can lift the toes up a little bit. Draw the knees towards your chest, and you can lean back a little bit. If this is uncomfortable in your tailbone, you might put a blanket under your hips. See if you can lift the legs up a little higher. And then maybe, just maybe, extend your arms out along the lower legs. If you feel you're starting to sink in your boat, like you're going, oh, and your spine's rounding, then hold your legs. Eventually, you'll get stronger, and you won't need to hold the legs so much. So core has a lot of, or rather, crow has a lot of core action in it, and we're going to explore that in a couple different variations. So holding your boat pose here, Navasana, we're going to explore a couple different options. So if you can release your legs and have your hands by your side, do so. You can take an inhale here, And then exhale, widen your knees and bring your hands in front of you. Knees are bent. If this is too difficult, keep your hands on your legs and just open the legs wide and bring your heart forward. So inhale, open, hands in the center if you're not holding legs, and exhale back to center. And do a few of these. This strengthens the legs as well as the core. And then you might do maybe 10 of those or less, and then just rest for a moment. So now we're going to get into a position that is very similar to the shape of crow, except we're going to be on our back. So lay down on your mat. And also for this, you'll want to have 2 blocks and maybe a blanket or a bolster. And I'll show you how we'll make use of that in a moment. So lay on your back, hands on each knee, and draw your knees towards each armpit. Toes touching or close together. Notice how that feels. It should feel like a pretty nice release in the spine. And then release your arms and bring your hands up towards the sky. Bend the arms slightly and bring your triceps just about on the inside of your knees. So some pictures of crow, for more advanced variation, the arms are straight. Most of us can't have straight arms, especially if we have wrist issues. So my wrists don't like to bend all the way. I've got some issues with many years of computer work. So most of us will have to have our arms bent a little bit. So position your hands up towards the sky, bend your elbows, and notice how this feels. Toes touching. Squeeze your knees into your upper arms. Crow pose, or sleeping crow. This is sometimes called sleeping crow. Notice that there's still some engagement in your legs, and you could activate your core here a little bit too. So if you're drawing your belly button in. And then relax, release, bring the knees together, take a break. You might rotate the ankles a little bit, and then reverse direction. Yeah. Say hi to Zoe as she passes by. Good. So then come up to a seat, widen your feet, and come into Malasana. So this is a squat. And in Malasana, we want our feet fairly wide, whatever works for you, so you can get your heels down on the mat. Again, this is a similar shape of crow pose. If this position is difficult for you, you might use a block and sit on the block. You might move your feet a little wider. Try to have your heels on the mat. If you can bring the heels or your feet in closer, that's totally fine. You can bring your hands to your heart. And again, squeeze your legs into your upper arms. Keep that in action there. If you don't need the block, you can set it aside and just let your hips go towards the earth. Press your hands together, and if you can, squeeze your legs into your outer arms and press your upper arms into your legs. So there's that action there. Notice how it feels in the hips. And again, try to keep the spine tall. So again, you're something like this in the spine. If you can't go this deep, again, use a block. And you could hold this as long as you would like. So let's take a break. Bring your hands out in front of you. Lift your hips up, toe heel your feet hip distance apart. Take a nice inhale, lengthen through your spine.
And exhale, come into a forward fold. So we've had our legs bent a lot. And we're going to get a little stretch into the hamstrings. They don't like that bent position for too long without a stretch. Keep your spine long, press into the balls of your feet, and draw your belly button in slightly. So you're hinging from the hips to come deeper into your forward fold. Good. And then come back up. And before we get into the pose, there's one other core work that I like to do before crow. And we're going to do that now. Some of you might be very familiar with it. We're only going to do a few of them. I would suggest doing it maybe up to 50. We'll do like maybe 10 or 15 or so. And this is the yogic bicycle. So come on down onto your back. Hands behind your head. Remember, keep your elbows out. Avoid pulling on your head. We don't want to strain the neck. Start with your knees together, knees bent, just about over your hips. And then as you exhale, straighten your left leg and bring your left shoulder towards your right knee. Inhale back to center, elbows touch the mat, but you might keep your head lifted with your hands. Exhale, straighten your right leg and bring your right shoulder in the direction of your left knee. Keep your elbows out of your line of peripheral vision. Inhale to center, exhale to the opposite knee. So continue this. Keep your core active and avoid pulling on your head or neck. Exhale as you twist and take the opposite shoulder towards the opposite knee. So I usually like to do about 30 to 50 of these a day. This really helps strengthen your core. It helps strengthen the obliques. And when you have a stronger core, you have a stronger lower back as well as coming into arm balances a little bit easier. So I'm going to call that good for now. I'm going to even out. And if you want to keep going, do so. So now let's come into doing crow. To start, you might want to use a couple blocks under your feet. This helps you find that balance. So when you're coming into an arm balance, it's sort of like a teeter-totter. You want to find that balance before you come all the way into the pose. So let's begin with our feet on the blocks and our hands, again, in that position that we were working on laying on our back. So come up onto your blocks, and this is what the bolster's great for. So if you're afraid of doing crow because you think you're going to crash into the floor with your head, position a bolster at the end of your mat or something soft so you know if you fall, your nose will be fine. So come onto your blocks with the blocks on the low setting, touching each other. So the blocks are close together, and come onto the balls of your feet. From here, widen your knees and bring your hands under your shoulders on the inside of your legs. So from here, again, just like we did laying down, your legs are going to squeeze into your upper arms, as high up into the upper arms or outer armpit as you can. As you bend your arms, lift your hips, and see if you can get your knees a little higher, as high up on your triceps towards the outer armpit as you can. Avoid looking to your feet. Look straight down or slightly in front. So you might look at that bolster. And from here, you want to lift your hips, keep your arms bent to start, engage your core, and then as you come slightly forward, you're going to feel lightness in your toes. And without pushing, just point your feet when you feel lightness in the toes and bring your toes to touch. And you're in crow. To come out, lower the feet and come back. So usually, after a few moments, seconds, is going to be enough. It is, at least for me, especially because of wrists. So rotate those wrists, stretch them out again in between your attempts. So the next one, the next variation, is to come into crow without the blocks. So it's really important also to find your balance and then just lift the feet by pointing the feet, so that you should feel like you're on tippy toes and you're barely touching with your weight through your feet. That you found that balance, but the toes are still there for support. And then you just point the feet and your toes are lifted. And as you do that, bring your toes to touch, engage your core, and we'll see what happens. So again, if you want that bolster in front of you so that you feel like you're not going to come onto your nose, that's totally fine. So if you're ready to try it without the blocks, I like to stand with my feet pretty close together, but turned out slightly, something like this. And then again, I bring my hands and arms on the inside of my legs. And then I'm going to turn sideways so you can see it a little bit better. And I start with my hands, if I'm leaning forward a little, just slightly in front of my shoulders. Lift your hips, bend your arms, and bring those knees as high up on the upper arm towards the outer armpit as you can. And then from here, you're going to have to come on the tippy toes and then lift the feet. It's a little harder to find that balance without having your feet on the blocks, because the blocks are lifting your feet up. So you have to come a little bit more into finding that balance when your feet aren't on the blocks. So start with the blocks, and then you can explore coming into it in this way. So again, I like to have my heels touching. Lift your hips, because you're not on the blocks. You got to lift them higher. Bend your arms, bring the knees to the outer armpits. Bend your arms, feel that you're supported. If you want, you could lift one foot up first, and then the other, toes touch. Look forward slightly. So instead of right down where your nose is, look slightly forward. And then come out. Rotate those wrists. Take a break. It's harder to do the pose and talk at the same time. So I hope that helps you find a couple variations to come into crow. If it's your wrists, again, you might use this little trick I showed you earlier. I forgot to do it, and I actually did it. But you can have the heels of your hands on the higher section, thicker section of your mat. And this is a little easier for wrists. And just remember that no pose is worth getting injured over. So listen to your body, not the ego. When you do a pose finally that you've been working on, celebrate. It's like, hey, you finally did it. It feels great. And then let it go. Notice how your body feels. Appreciate what it can do for you. And have fun and just really honor yourselves and be safe. So let me know how you like this practice, how it worked for you. And if it was difficult, that's okay. Keep working on it. Keep building the core. And one day when you find that balance, it'll be an aha moment, because it will feel like lightness. It won't feel like a challenge. It'll just feel
like you found that center of that teeter-totter and you found that balance. It's really key to engage the core muscles and lift through the core to keep the hips up slightly with a little hinging forward, which causes sometimes a little strain in the wrist. So having that wedge under the heel of the hand can be very helpful. And if you have any other questions, let me know. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.